Welcome to another week, another show of Hawkeyed with me, Dave O'Hara. Great show lined up for you this week. I know you'll think so after viewing it. Craig and Stacy Schrader will be joining us in a couple weeks with the Fight with Flash Foundation. They're traveling, busy with all the dance marathons and all the other wonderful work they do with the Fight with Flash Foundation, fighting children's cancer. So that being said, we've got Jess Settles on today's show, going to talk Hawkeye men's basketball. And then John Steppe from the Cedar Rapids Gazette going to join us talking Bluder's Bunch, Iowa women's basketball. But Jess Settles joins us. And of course, Jess, one of the former Iowa Hawkeye basketball playing greats and now a broadcaster with Fox Sports and also with the Big Ten Network, ESPN. Jess, I hear you all over the place these days. You were calling an Iowa State game the other day. My friend, thanks as always for joining us. And secondly, how's everything going with you?
Everything's going well, Dave. They're not going to let me call any Cyclone games anymore, though, buddy. I'm 0-2 since I've been in the building, and that might be my last couple trips to Hilton if they don't start playing better when I show up.
Well, here's the thing to that, Jess. As long as you don't have that effect on the Hawkeyes, we'll be good. So I knew you'd like that. So, Jess, let's get into it. You know, as we go into this season, I'm looking for the right words because I'm just hoping that, and Kent McCausland, your teammate and former Hawkeye great shooter, is going to be joining me next week. The week after that is Adam Haluska, former Hawkeye great, a little after your time. I don't want to be talking, and you said this before as well, I don't want to be talking about you and Kent McCausland being the last two Hawkeyes that on this show that made it to a Sweet 16. And fans, that means the Hawks got to win 2 games in March Madness to make it to the Sweet 16. And Jess, I can't believe I'm going to say this to you again. It's almost dubious for you and Kent. 1999 with Tom Davis as your coach. You guys were the last of a dying breed to make it to the Sweet 16 with the Hawkeyes, Jess.
Yeah, it's hard to believe. I remember that was Coach Davis's last year, and he was let go. And so Gary Close and Rich Walker and Frank DeLeo and Coach Davis, those were the coaching staffs. And we, they had already cleaned out the lockers and they cleaned out their offices before we even engaged in that tournament. So it was kind of like, just us against the world, and we're out there on our own, and there's no coming back. And can we make it to the Final Four? And ended up having success in Denver. And then I think we just came back to Iowa City for maybe one night, hopped on a plane the next day or so, and then headed down to Phoenix. And then lost to the national champs, UConn, that year.
Yep.
Khalid Elamine, Rip Hamilton. They won it, and we battled them. They were the better team, but we had a great team. And, yeah, who would have thought, Coach Davis leaves, get a totally new staff. All of us are gone. I guess Dean Oliver came back and Jason Smith, a couple of those guys. But who would ever thought that would have been the last group to be in the Sweet 16? It's very disappointing. And hopefully that will change soon.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, then Coach Alford comes in, and then after him, Todd Licklider, and then Fran now in his 13th year. But, you mentioned that, and I've talked to Jeff Horner about that and Adam Haluska about that Northwestern State game they lost. And I know I don't want to swear at fans by saying that, but that was a tough loss. And you expected that team with Bruner, Haluska, and Horner. They expected it, like you said. It's been disappointing, and for whatever reason, injuries, everybody plays with them, Jess. But let's get into the here and now. Iowa Hawkeyes, Big Ten, 5th seed in the Big Ten tournament upcoming this week. Are you going to be calling games, or are you enjoying them as a fan, or how are you approaching this tournament?
Yes, I'm planning on just going up on Thursday and Friday to watch it and just connect with people. I haven't been for a few years, but I won't be doing any major work as far as calling games to the Big Ten tournament. Now, I'm expecting to be calling NIT games the following week. So we'll see how those dates fall. Be probably, I think they announced that maybe an hour or two after the selection Sunday for the big dance. But yeah, it's it's an interesting Iowa team, a very good team, a team that can, go to Indiana and blow them out by 30. A team that can come back and beat Michigan State, who's got a great team, and yet obviously a very discouraging, disappointing last game against Nebraska, who they're playing better. But I think it's anybody's tournament. Purdue is going to be the favorite, and then everybody else outside of Minnesota almost seems like they're all even. It's very difficult to predict it, but Iowa won't be afraid of anybody. And you think about the Hawkeyes and Penn State, that they're two teams that if they really get hot, which they've shown many times this year they can, then they can really get those brackets upset. If they're not shooting well, then it's going to be one and done or two and done. And then the inconsistencies of Perkins. When Perkins is playing like he can, they might be the best team in the conference outside of Purdue.
Yeah.
When he's so inconsistent, it's kind of head scratching, and I hope he can put together 2 or 3 good games in a row, and then they're going to be there for a while.
And then the key thing you talked about with the Hawkeyes, Jess, and I want to visit this to your point about Tony Perkins, but I want to talk about Patrick McCaffrey coming back in a big way. Hopefully he can continue playing back into the lineup like he did on against Nebraska that last game, although it wasn't a good end result for the team. But Jess, you also said one other very important thing earlier this year, amongst many important things. But you said the Hawks can rebound. We know this, Dave. They can get it off the glass. We know they can run, and we know they can score. But when all that isn't working, they still got to play defense. And Jess, that's the question. We can all talk about, oh, hey, Nebraska played well or they shot well. But Jess, they had a lot of open bunnies, a lot of layups, a lot of short shots, a lot of open threes. And to your point, like against the first game against Michigan State, when a Hawkeye offense isn't flowing, or they barely struggle to score 50 against Nebraska at Nebraska, or they barely struggle to score, against Rutgers and other teams, against Northwestern, at Northwestern. Just when they can't score, you got to stop people too. And you really highlighted that for us early this year. And that seems to be where, besides the Tony Perkins factor you talked about, that may also be a place to stub their toe as not playing defense, Jess.
Yeah, I thought over the last couple of years they've been a lot better. And I think that a lot of that has to do with Keegan Murray being able to cover all 5 positions. And obviously he's not there now, but Rabrach has gotten better at pick and roll defense. He really struggled when he first got on campus, and you got to be able to guard ball screens or you just can't do it. But I thought they'd been better, but there are, you're right. That last game, you give up too many easy baskets to a team that you just have to beat, and you have to get stops. And it's interesting. They're going to score 80 to 90 points most nights, and so those nights where I think Chris was 3 for 13 from 3, you have to be able to get stops. But it's very unpredictable now with. And we've talked about this, and you've mentioned this before accurately, that when you take NIL and transfer portal and COVID 6th and 7th year type of stuff, you got so many teams that I think Drake the other day, they said they had 2 or 3 guys who are 25 years old.
You're right. Yep.
So at some point, hopefully this madness will stop. This is a topic for another show, right? But I was one of the original 6th-year guys, as you know, based upon injuries. So that was a little more unique. But you get 4 years to play college sports and you're done. Now, most people are in that 5-year category, and it's going to go back to that. But I just look, if my kid is a wrestler or a softball player or whatever, I don't want them when they're 19 going up against a 25 or 26-year-old mature player across the court or the field or whatever it is. So it's so hard to predict these tournaments. And, you got these veteran teams, and then you got these young guys, and then would you rather have a 5-star freshman or would you rather have a 6th-year Connor McCaffrey?
Yeah.
It's really a tough place to be right now in college sports with the expectations and everything, but it's roster management and guys coming and going, and you don't even know, Dave, who in your own locker room is even all in, or if they're talking to someone else and making a plan behind your back. It's lost what it was intended to be, and so they're going to have to really take a hard look at it. But as far as predicting these games and shooting and which teams are going to, I can't even, I work too hard for my money. This is why I don't gamble.
Jess, I got to say thank you so much for joining us all year. You got to get back on the road. I greatly appreciate you taking time for this call. It's always great to catch up with you, Jess. You've been a great help on this show, and always love our conversations on the air and off the air. He is Jess Settles, former Iowa Hawkeye basketball playing great, and now current college basketball analyst and broadcaster. Jess, my friend, thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
You bet. For Jess Settles, I'm Dave O'Hara. When we come back, we'll talk to John Steppe to close out the show with the next two segments. John covers Hawkeye athletics for the Cedar Rapids Gazette. Also, congratulations to Tom Brands and Brands guys, Brands boys, for at the Big Ten Wrestling Tournament this past weekend. You had Spencer Lee win a Big Ten title and be the wrestler of the tournament, as well as Rio Woods winning his bracket. And so he's going on to nationals. All 10 Hawkeyes qualifying for the national tournament. So for the aforementioned wrestlers and baseball players and softball players, now we're going to, and Bluder's bunch. We're also got now, and Hawkeye men's basketball. We're also going to talk Hawkeye football for the next two segments, as well as Bluder's bunch. So much more to come up on this show with John Steppe from the Cedar Rapids Gazette. So for Jess Settles, I'm Dave O'Hara on Hawkeye. Back with more in just a few moments.
To have a strong finish, you need an excellent start. It's true on the track and also in the field. That's why Mershman Seeds works tirelessly to deliver cutting-edge technology year after year. Introducing Starting Line, Mershman Seeds' latest advancement in seed treatment, now providing added protection from white mold and sudden death syndrome all season. Ask for Starting Line seed treatment from Mershman Seeds, your friend in the field.
Hi, I'm Joel from Tice Chevrolet. We've lived through some very interesting times the last few months. Ensuring everyone's safety is more important than ever. That is why we are participating in the Chevy Clean program. At your request, we will pick up your vehicle, service it, and return it after we've cleaned it using the current CDC guidelines. This is just another way to work towards exceeding your expectations. So give us a call and let us show you what it means to be part of the Tice Automotive family.
Welcome back to Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. Here's our buddy John Steppe. John, good to see you again.
Great to be here.
Great seeing you. Thanks for being here. And he is John Steppe with the Cedar Rapids Gazette. Covers all things Iowa Hawkeye sports. So, John, you were up in Minneapolis, or as Lisa Bluder called it, Iowa City North, and for obvious reasons. What a tournament. Hawkeye women Big Ten tournament champions. Didn't win the regular season like last year, but my goodness, John. Number 2 in the country now as the ratings came out. They will probably, or most assuredly, get the double or the 2 home games, provided they win the first game like last year. Hopefully no hiccup in the road, losing to a Creighton like last year. I got to tell you, John, and I know I mentioned this to you off the air, and I want to bring it on the air, and the viewers know this. When Coach Bluder was on this show, Caitlin Clark was on this show, and Monica Sonano, all 3 separately around Christmas, New Year's, and the first week of January, all 3 separately said, John, we're not going to forget about that Creighton game last year. So now you saw a very talented and motivated team. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, it was really impressive what they did, particularly when you look at Sunday with that championship game. Winning back-to-back Big Ten tournament titles by itself is a really impressive thing. If you look back into history, it doesn't happen a lot, especially with how strong the Big Ten has been. So just winning alone is quite the feat. And then you look at how they won. That's the really remarkable thing, where I think it was a 37-point lead at halftime against a very good Ohio State team. This isn't any pushover team that they beat. This is a very respectable Ohio State
team. Top 15 team.
It was great for Caitlin Clark's National Player of the Year candidacy. If that doesn't help you dramatically with that, when you do it on national television, you do it in such an authoritative fashion where finishing with 30 points, 17 assists, 10 rebounds.
That sounds made up, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's unreal.
Even when you take out the rebounds, just look at the points and the assists. You just don't see that very often.
And ESPN is doing a great job. All the national shows are saying, nothing against Aaliyah Boston, nothing against South Carolina. But how do you not have Caitlin Clark as your National Player of the Year? So that's the big debate now on all these ESPN shows. And I didn't mean to cut you off, but I wanted to say this, John. We also have to talk about Gabby Marshall.
Yeah.
Finally got her shot back. And, Michael and I have talked about that in weeks leading up to this. Coach Bluder and I talked about that. Monica and Caitlin and I all talked about that. She's back. McKenna Warnock is healthy. Then you look at, Hannah Stalke, what else needs to be said? 6th Player of the Year in the Big Ten Award. And she's only a freshman. John, this team, I just mentioned all the names. Fill in the blanks again for us. You were there. What else did you see?
Well, you bring up a great point with the really a great weekend for Gabby Marshall on the all-tournament team. That's really important for this Iowa team moving forward because there are going to be teams that are going to really focus hard on stopping Caitlin Clark and stopping Monica Sonano.
Good luck with that, by the way.
Yeah. First of all, that by itself is enough of a task. But it's even harder to do that when you have a player like Gabby Marshall who is really playing well, when you have a player like Kate Martin who's really playing well.
Thank you. I can't believe that one name I forget, the young lady who does it all seemingly for that team, keeps everything together.
So it's a really, when you have those third, fourth, fifth, sixth players really clicking the way that they were this weekend, that could be potentially a Final Four team. Obviously, there are a lot of wild cards between now and Final Four, so don't start purchasing your plane tickets on my
We're not going to Dallas
here
just yet. Now, I will say this, though, another name we didn't mention, Sydney Afalter.
Oh, yeah.
What a game she had against Ohio State, but she's getting meaningful minutes off the bench now and working herself in. This is, you got to get, John, as you know, and you were there, you have to get the team arcing in the right direction as we're getting closer to March Madness, but that was certainly, we are now officially, with all these conference tournaments, rest assured, viewers, as John's nodding with me, March Madness is here. Have you seen some of these finishes throughout college basketball? But let's talk about then where this takes the Iowa women. But what was your biggest, before we get there, what was your biggest takeaway? You spent the whole weekend up in Minneapolis, besides the weather, and the great Iowa fans, though, that traveled throughout that weather up north. What was your biggest takeaway from this tournament this past weekend?
Well, the first thing that really jumped out to me was the thing that you were just talking about, the fans, where this level of fan support really does not happen everywhere. And yes, the team is really good. The team is number 2 right now in the AP poll. That, would really convey the idea of, okay, you probably have pretty good fans. Fans are going to want to turn out for that. But even then, there are a lot of cases where you have top 10 teams that do not have nearly the support that Iowa had. And that really was Carver North, as Lisa Bluder called it. So that was a big takeaway. Caitlin Clark was Caitlin Clark. I guess that would be my next biggest takeaway, where when I was filling out the tournament ballot, it really wasn't a question who is going to be the most outstanding player. Right. Last year, there's a little bit of okay, is it Clark, is it Sonano? Because Sonano had an excellent tournament last year.
Yeah.
This year, it really was clear, okay, Caitlin Clark is really a once-in-a-generation talent, and she showed right there that. I tweeted a photo over the weekend of a young fan with a poster that had a school paper attached to it. And it was really sweet, and the paper was about Caitlin Clark. And she was hoping to get Caitlin Clark's autograph.
Yeah.
And then later, I see the same family, and Clark signed it, of course. And there's a signed basketball, too, a little mini basketball. So I think really that makes a big difference. And I wrote about the rise of Big Ten women's basketball today as we're recording this. Got published this morning. And Caitlin Clark is a big part of why, not just at Iowa, but across the Big Ten, there is a lot more interest in women's basketball than 5 years ago, 10 years ago.
Amen to that. So, John, great coverage on the Iowa Hawkeye women's Bluder's bunch. We're going to get more into their postseason as the weeks go on. Best of luck to them. Exciting times, John, and thank you. Great reporting in your writing, but also bringing it on the show here. Great stuff from you covering the Gazette and being at the Big Ten women's tournament last week in Minneapolis. Thank you for that.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
Truly my pleasure. So, folks, we're going to be back with a closing segment. Buckle up some more. Hawkeye football, a lot of good, some maybe not as good, but got to get through it, don't we? So he is John Steppe, Iowa beat writer, covers the Hawkeye sports beat, and for the Cedar Rapids Gazette, I'm Dave O'Hara with Hawkeyed. Back with more in just a few moments.
Hi, I'm Joel from Tice Automotive Family. We're living through some of the most interesting and challenging times many of us have ever seen. Knowing who you can rely on is more important than ever. Many of us turn to our families to get us through, and the same holds true here. From our fair, upfront pricing to exceptional service after the sale, we truly want to exceed your expectations. So give us a call or stop by and let us show you what it means to be part of the Tice Automotive family.
Who do you trust to produce the best yield? A seat company that's chasing technology or a seat company that's writing a book on it? Merschman Seeds is a leader in technology. We're independent and family owned. Our sister company, MS Technologies, provides access to world-class traits and genetics. And our starting line seed treatment is second to none. Who can you trust with your yields? Mershman Seeds, your friend in the field.
Welcome back to Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. Here's John Steppe, and he covers the Iowa Hawkeye sports beat for the Cedar Rapids Gazette. You see all of John's information at the bottom of the screen, along with mine, throughout the last two segments. So, John, thanks for staying over for this segment. So, maybe not as pleasant stuff. We're going to get to more pleasant stuff, so let's start with that. What happened yesterday? Again, we record this on Tuesday afternoon, March 7th, and the announcement came out that a settlement of that lawsuit. So, John, I'll say this. Kirk Ferentz's statement was very telling. Hey, we as coaches did not sign off on this. He, Chris Doyle, Brian Ferentz, a lot of these coaches were going to be without cause and without charge. The state of Iowa, Gary Barta, some of the other administratives in charge made the decision, some politicians, that let's just pay a settlement. Let's move on to something less litigious and less political and talk about some of the Hawks. And again, check out John's fine work on Cade, McNamara, and Erick, all the interviews you did with them. Give me a couple of quick takeaways, if you would, your perception of the incumbent, supposedly, or the going to be the anointed starting quarterback at Iowa, Cade McNamara, from Michigan transfer in the portal, but also his tight end, Erick, all from Michigan. Give me a takeaway from both of those interviews you did, and then we'll talk about Hawkeyes and the NFL Combine, please.
So Erick Hall, I think people are really going to enjoy. That was a fun interview where...
What about that? It was so fun.
Well, there were a couple funny stories that he told. So obviously I'm trying to get a sense of what kind of person is Cade McNamara. And obviously talking to Cade helps, but it also helps sometimes when you can talk to your teammates. And that brought up the story of Erick Hall's first time golfing was with Cade McNamara. And Cade McNamara is competitive, as people would imagine, and so competitive that he chucked his golf clubs. So
a fiery competitive.
Yes. And then there was the story, a really heartwarming story that Erick Hall also told about his first day in Iowa City. He goes to IHOP. And he's saying, okay, I'll go to IHOP. And then it was the incredibly good chicken and waffles there. And perhaps the even more remarkable part is he's talking about how there's an elderly person who sat down next to him and talked to him for 20 minutes and how it was the most wonderful conversation and how then he paid for his meal too. So Erick seems to be very quickly acclimating to Iowa City. Cade McNamara, if there's one big takeaway, he wants to win a Big Ten championship.
Yeah.
And he came here to do that and has a lot of confidence in that. He, from a health standpoint, seems to be doing well. He said that he expects to be 100% by the end of spring ball.
That's encouraging. First time in a long time.
Yeah, so you look at that. If you have a healthy Cade McNamara by the end of spring ball, I think pretty much any Iowa fan would take that.
So talk a little bit about some of these guys and Hawks doing well at the NFL Combines, please.
Well, it would be... You have to start with Jack Campbell with this conversation because Jack really did a lot to help his draft stock. Where you look at his numbers versus a lot of the other linebackers, really outstanding. You look at his 40 time, a lot of people pay attention to that number. That wasn't as great as some of those other numbers, but you have to keep in mind too the type of linebacker that Jack Campbell is. He's going up against some smaller, quicker, different style linebackers. So overall, he did a lot to improve his draft stock.
Good.
Lucas Van Ness came in with first-round expectations. I don't expect that to change necessarily. You look at his numbers, his 40 time was particularly impressive. A lot of the things, if you look at how he did versus the other defensive ends and the other edge rushers, it doesn't necessarily stand out as much, but that's also partially because he's a bit of a tweener between defensive end and defensive tackle. So that, okay, those numbers don't jump out as much at defensive end, but if you were to compare him against defensive tackles at the Combine, that would be pretty good. Yeah. Kayvon Merriweather, he did enough, I think, to be really in day 3 consideration in terms of those measurements. And then obviously anybody who's talked to Kayvon Merriweather, I think pretty much everybody's been impressed. Yeah. Really that charismatic of a guy, that much of a leader, the type of person who you'd want in the locker room. Riley Moss, he had good times. He did everything that he needed to do. And then, how could I forget about Sam Laporta? Third fastest 40 in a pretty strong tight end class this year. So that's another thing where Sam obviously has good tape, kind of like Jack Campbell, where the tape is good. Let's see what the measurements are. And when you run a 4.59 40 as a tight end, that's pretty good. And you look at it, T.J. Hawkinson ran a 4.7.
But it's great to hear the Hawkeyes doing very, very well this year in the NFL Combines. John, we could go on and on. There's so much to get to. We look forward to catching up with you later this spring or this summer going into fall camp. Great seeing you again. Thank you.
Yes, thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. He's John Steppe with the Cedar Rapids Gazette, covers all things Iowa Hawkeye sports for us. Thanks also to our good buddy Jess Settles for covering Iowa Hawkeye men's basketball, and my production partner Michael Merrick, and most importantly to you, the viewers. For Hawkeye, I'm Dave O'Hara. That's all from us. Thanks to all of you. And as always, thanks for staying tuned at the end of the program for these rolling credits to give our advertisers and sponsors the attention and credit they so richly deserve. And as always, to our aforementioned guests and to you, the viewers. That's all from us at Hawkeye. Thanks to all of you.